Welcome. I was just going to give a shot at doing a live on YouTube. I've done a lot of lives on TikTok, and they get a little hectic after a while. And we get our Trumplefucks in there, and they try to take you down. It gets to be a little bit of a pain. So I thought I'd see what happens here on YouTube Live. I've done it before, and it's turned out all right. Probably won't get the same number of people, but that's even better. All right, Peggy, hi. Keith, hi. Fam Daddy from Florida. No, it's all right. I like Florida. Old Soul. Hey, Boomer. Hey, chat. TGIF. Yeah, thank you, Boomer. Or thank you, Old Soul. I appreciate that. We missed you this week on the show. Hopefully, we can get you back again soon. We had some pretty eventful things go on today. We had Michael uh, Michael Johnson go down to Florida to meet with Donald Trump. Now, this is a weird situation. Michael Johnson is being shit on by Donald Trump. They're trying to take him out. Um, Old Soul says she'll be back next week. Thank you. I'm looking forward to it. But Michael Johnson goes down to um, Florida to kiss Dirty Diaper Donnie Trump's ass. And why does he do that? Well, because he's in fucking trouble. He's in trouble. He's got to figure out a way to do the Ukraine funding bill and this FISA bill, and the MAGA idiots are fighting him on it. And if he does something they don't like, he's going to try to kick them out. Now, Donald Trump is in line with MAGA. Marjorie Taylor Greene is first and foremost wanting to kick Mike Johnson out. So he goes down to see Donald Trump. And it seems like he got Donald Trump on his side, and that goes right along with who Donald Trump is. He's a narcissist. I had a father that was a narcissist, and for a long time he was difficult to deal with until I figured out what the secret was. Because there's so much about their own personal image. If you just go down and pat them on the back and tell them they're geniuses, they'll do anything you want, even if they hated you yesterday. And that's what Mike Johnson did. Apparently now he's in line with Donald Trump. Donald Trump supports Mike Johnson. But in the process, Marjorie Taylor Greene's Lord and Savior fucked her over because she wanted Mike Johnson out. He goes down to see Donald Trump, and now they're fucking buddies. Wow. That's crazy. Marjorie Taylor Greene must be just losing her shit because nobody likes her now. Donald Trump went against her. Mike Johnson hates her. MAGA hates her. The normal people hate her. So what the fuck is going on? Okay, we've got hi, Mike Bob from Ecuador. Ecuador, for God's sake. Good to see you. We've got Jeanette. I think that's Sweden or Norway. I don't know the flag, so just tell me. Peggy says, hope he holds his nose. Yeah, I hope he does fucking too. Gator Gal or Gator Girl says, hi, Boomer, love your podcast. Thank you for keeping it real for all of us. Well, I thank you for that too. I appreciate you tuning to the Rational Boomer podcast. The podcast has actually been growing pretty fast as of late. And the thing you have to understand is when I went on TikTok and even here on YouTube, the end game was to have the podcast. I spent many years of my life in radio, and that's where I feel the most comfortable. So I wanted to be able to have a podcast, but that's a little hard to do if nobody knows who the hell you are. So I went on TikTok, thought I'd get a few thousand people, get somebody to know me so I could start a podcast. Well, it got bigger on TikTok, and now we have the podcast as a going concern, and I'm as excited as hell that we can pull this many people together and just talk about important stuff and get ready for this fight ahead of us going into November. Jeanette gave me a heads up. It's not Sweden or Norway. It's Denmark. Thank you, Jeanette. I'm looking forward to get to Denmark at some point. I hear it's absolutely beautiful there. Stormy Rose Butterfly says, hello, Mike. We love you in Little Elm, Texas. Well, Stormy Rose, I bet there's some places in Texas they don't fucking like me at all. But that's all right. You know, I've told people before, my hobby is pissing dumb fucks off. And so if there are dumb fucks out there that don't like me, well, too fucking bad. I can deal with that. Did you hear about that FISA bill? Now, just a couple of days ago, um, Mike Johnson and the Republicans tried to pass a FISA bill. This is an authorization, actually, and this is basically a spy bill, foreign intelligence, and this current authorization is ending on April 19th. Now, the FBI and the CIA and all these people say this is really important. If we don't have this authorization, it's going to put this country in danger. But of course, the Republicans wanted to do everything they could to shit on it because they wanted Joe Biden to look bad or whatever. So they put this up and it fails. But the reason why it fails is because Donald Trump said, kill FISA, kill FISA, which is weird because when he was in office, he authorized this FISA bill, the very same one. So I'm going to explain to you how the Republicans fucked themselves on this. They took this FISA authorization, made it more draconian, infringed on more people's rights, because that's the way the Republicans love it. And they also wanted to shorten the term of this authorization. Initially, it was 5 years. And I'm sure Donald Trump looked at that and said, hey, when I become president, that won't be reauthorized till after I'm done with my second term. So we got to shorten that up so I can fuck with it while I'm in office. Well, that's the funny thing about it. He has no chance in hell of being in the office. There's no way. There's no way he's going to be elected. I'd be happy to debate with anybody who says otherwise. But what he did was, or what they did was, they cut it from 5 years to 2 years. So, assuming Donald Trump is the president, he can go fuck with it and make it even worse. But since he's not going to be elected president, they fuck themselves. Because if they did it 5 years, then Joe Biden couldn't touch it when he does get elected to the presidency. And then they could hope against hope that maybe a Republican would come back after Joe Biden and get in there and be able to deal with the FISA thing. But that's not what's going to happen because they cut it from 5 years to 2 years. So now Joe Biden can go in there right at the midterm and say, this is fucked up. Change everything that the Republicans did and fix it the way it's supposed to be. So a big thank you to the Republicans for being dumb fucks. Key says, I'm so disgusted with this maggot clique, whose only agenda is to rip us apart from the inside. You know, when this all first started, I just thought they were dumb, and I thought they would just do anything to counter the Democrats. But now I have to say they certainly are dumb because they do the dumbest things. But it does certainly seem like they're trying to destroy the country, democracy, and apparently they're all about authoritarianism. Now, I got to tell you, if you're going to have an authoritarian or a dictator, they're not good people. They're horrible people, but you need somebody smarter than Donald Trump. And I think that's where the problem has lied with Donald Trump. Donald Trump is not a smart man. I think when he came into the presidency, he wasn't even necessarily an evil man, but he is a useful idiot. Now, when he was first running for the presidency, I don't think anybody took him seriously at all that he would actually win, but the left side media kept putting him on TV. He gained some legitimacy, and then he became president. I think at that time, the Republicans said, wow, this is fucked up, until they realized exactly what Mike Johnson realized today. He's so easily manipulated. All you have to do is pat him on the back, tell him he's a genius, tell him he's the greatest guy in the world, and then you can manipulate him to do anything you fucking want. You can. So when he came into office, as dumb as he is, people like Mitch McConnell, Kevin McCarthy, or any of the other Republican fucks realized, all I have to do is word this right. Next thing you know, Donald Trump thinks this is his fucking idea, and he'll do anything we want. Donald Trump was essentially a marionette, a useful idiot. It wasn't just him that was evil. It was all the Republicans around him that saw he could be used, and that's where the evil came out. And that's the dangerous part. We would have been better off if Donald Trump had a spine, had a soul, had an intellect, but he has none of those things. So these people just used him for all he's worth. And then he got so deep, then he became evil because right now all he's worried about is doing whatever it takes to get support, money, votes. I mean, he really fucked himself on this abortion thing, especially after what happened in Arizona. Can you believe this? Arizona brings back a law from 1864 to ban abortions. Talk about draconian, talk about evil. You have to understand, I listened to a story about the man who put this law in effect in 1864. Here's a couple things you have to remember. Women couldn't vote at the time. Arizona wasn't a state. And the guy that put this together was a misogynistic pedophile. Yeah, he married like a 10-year-old girl. Granted, it's the 1860s, but even still, that sounds a little fucked up. This guy was not the finest and the best amongst us. He was a criminal and he was a pedophile. And that's who crafted this law that Arizona is now embracing. All right. JV says, hi, Boomer. Enjoy listening to your reporting. No longer watch local news. Well, I watch it just to hear what the stories are. But when I want to get the full impact and the full information about the story, I do a little digging. Just about broken. Love from the mountains of BC, Canada. Thanks for keeping things real, Boomer. We need a man like you in Canada for some well-needed ass kicking. Yeah. Actually, my wife and I are thinking about going up to Canada later in the summer or fall, going to Montreal. I've never been to Montreal, and I'd like to see that. Yeah, Old Soul says, in 1864, the age of consent in Arizona was 10 years old. Can you fucking believe that? It's unfucking believable. It's absolutely crazy. Bob says from Kansas City area, retired in Ecuador, 48 states, big rig diver. Wow, that sounds impressive. Got the fuck out of the country and went to Ecuador. You know, I know some people that have done that. I had an uncle that moved to Thailand, I think, when he retired. And I wouldn't be opposed to doing that if I didn't have family here, my sons, my granddaughter. I'm not going too far for my granddaughter. She's my best buddy, even though she loves to give me shit. But I can't fault her for it because that's all I do, give people shit. And it's a way of showing love. But she comes by it honestly, and if I can give people shit, I got to be able to take it from her, and I do. James says, hey, Mike from New Jersey. Hey, New Jersey. Love New Jersey. I love the East Coast. My wife and I go out in the East Coast in the fall. We were in Portland, Maine this past fall. Before that, we were in Burlington, New Hampshire. Got to get to New York and New Jersey again. Love that. You know, as a retired guy doing the shit I do, I want to do more traveling. I want to meet more people. Turns out I'm going to be in Washington, D.C. on November 7th. I have a listener that wanted me to come speak to a crowd. And I'm all about that. I'm happy to do that. That's fun for me. But to be in Washington, D.C. 2 days after Joe Biden kicks Donald Trump's ass, oh, fuck yeah, I'm going. I got to check this out. It'll be interesting to see what the vibe is in D.C. I think it's going to be vastly different, and I think it's going to be more positive. People will feel better once they see what I've been telling you for months and months. This is going to be a blue wave. There's no other possibility. Everything the Republicans have ever done in the last 2 years has been wrong. Overturning Roe v. Wade, getting their ass kicked in the midterms and not learning a lesson and then continuing to embrace it. Donald Trump goes in front of the cameras and said, I overturned Roe v. Wade. I'm responsible for it. And I think it's just now, which is amazing because they should have got this in 2022, but they're all now realizing, hey, this abortion thing isn't good for us. Well, no shit, motherfucker. So Donald Trump is in a bad position. He embraced this thing. He realizes now that 75% of the country hate him for it, and that's not good when you're going to an election. But then he fucks himself even more. He doesn't know what to do. Then he comes out and says, well, I'm not going to sign a national abortion ban. Whoops, because that pisses off the evangelicals and his radical right. So now he's pissed off the far right and the evangelicals. He hasn't made any gains with the 75% of the people that are pro-choice because he's the motherfucker that started this whole thing. And then he tries to explain it away by saying, well, I just want the states to handle it. But when Arizona did what Arizona did, he was asking us, oh, no, I don't like that. But don't worry, they'll get that straightened out. I just want the states to decide. Well, dumb fuck, the state just did decide, and they decided badly and put you in a bad situation. What do you really think, Donnie? Problem is you don't fucking think. Dan says, hello, Mike from Port Angeles, Washington. Never been to Washington. I'd like to get up there sometime. Nice to hear from you, Dan. You know, I kind of like this on YouTube a little better than TikTok. TikTok, it gets fucking crazy. I got to have a moderator. There's questions. I can't keep up with the questions. And then you get the Trumplafucks in, and they're trying to take you down. And I tell people, don't talk to them. But, of course, they piss somebody off. And then there's an argument in the comments, and it's a fucking mess. And I get tired of it. I enjoy TikTok, but it's sometimes more work than it needs to be. All right, Old Soul. Now, if you folks don't know who Old Soul is, she's a very popular person on the Rational Boomer podcast. And if you don't know about the Rational Boomer podcast, what the fuck is wrong with you? The Rational Boomer podcast is right here on YouTube. You can get it every day, literally every day. And once a week, Old Soul comes on. She's a young woman in Nevada, truly amazing. Truly a giving, compassionate woman, far more than I could ever be. And it's an absolute pleasure to listen to her when she's on the show. So if you haven't done it yet, by all means, do it. Now, Old Soul says, did you see Representative Gino Beluso from Tennessee on the floor arguing first cousins should be allowed to get married? He argued against the bill to pass it. I got to tell you, I don't have any cousins that I'd want to date, let alone marry. But that sounds like something coming out of an old boy from Tennessee. You're arguing for cousins marrying. Wow. Wow. Thanks, Old Soul. I appreciate it. David Sauls, did you talk about Johnson and Trump's speech? I won't listen to either one of them. I didn't listen to the speech. I heard little cuts of it. And the fact of the matter is it was all pointless. They went down there to discuss election integrity. They were there to fight to keep non-residents of the country from voting. They're going to fight against that. Well, it's already against the law, and the instances of that happening is like 0.00001%. It's not a thing. But this is so much like the Republicans. Come up with a problem that doesn't exist, like election fraud, and then tell people you're going to fight for it, for them, for it, and then do fucking nothing about it. You have to understand, Donald Trump's in trouble, and that meeting with Mike Johnson was as beneficial to him as it was Mike Johnson. Donnie's running out of money big fucking time. He's really running out of money. And he can't afford to put on rallies. And coming up Monday, he's going to be on trial. And he's going to have to be in that courtroom every day, 10 hours a day, 4 days a week. And he can't leave. He can't miss. He's got to behave. So he's going to be out of the public eye a lot over the next couple of months. So he's going to grab onto any chance when he can get attention because he's an attention whore, pussy-ass bitch. Bob says, Old Soul, you crack me up. I memorize your term of street talk, gorilla pimp. Your input is priceless in our cause. It absolutely is. And that's the funny thing about Old Soul. You will ever, The funniest thing about Old Soul is this. She'll come out, she's compassionate, she's articulate, she's soft, she's kind, but every so often she'll come out with some street slang and you'll go, fuck, where'd that come from? Old Soul says, Bob, I wasn't always saved. Okay, I get that. Terry says, in Tennessee, can't you marry your sister? Well, at this point, one of my sisters is a Trump humper, so she doesn't even talk to me. So that's fucking out. Yeah, it's interesting how the Republicans start out this abortion thing and say, let's let the states decide. And when they finally get that, then they're all over trying to get a national abortion ban. They're still trying to do that. Donald Trump walked back from it because he knows it's a loser. But some reason Republicans still embrace it. They're still pushing it. Donald Trump says he wouldn't sign a national abortion ban, but of course he's a pathological fucking liar. He'll do whatever is expeditious to him. So if you believe what he said about no abortion ban, don't buy that shit. Dan the man says, what's up, boomer? Not much, you? I'm just hanging out here talking some shit as I do. I really like the YouTube lives. I like to be able to interact with people, but on TikTok, you just can't keep up with it. There's so fucking many of them. This is a much more calm and easier thing. And as long as I get to talk to people, that's what I enjoy. And that's why, if you ever listen to the Rational Boomer podcast, I focus a lot on the audience. I read a lot of emails. Fact is, I read every email I get coming in, unless somebody says, I don't want you to read it. And then I'll probably read it anyway. But the input from you, the listeners, the viewers, whatever you want to say, is absolutely crucial. Because it's not just me. I'm not here to just pontificate. I'm kind of a shit stirrer. I throw things out. I throw ideas out, and then other people have input. They send emails. And in the case with Old Soul and other people, the listeners, they come on the show, because that's the difference between my podcast and other people's podcast. I don't have a bunch of people selling books or trying to promote other podcasts. I have people coming on that are my listeners, and they have input and they have a perspective that I don't have. And I think that's important, that you don't listen to just everything I say. Well, you could listen to everything I say, but it's important to get the other perspective. And somebody like Old Soul is a perfect example of that. Old Soul says Mike Pence was more upset about Trump saying he won't sign a national abortion bill than he was January 6th. Yeah, absolutely right. Mike Pence is one of those evangelicals. And I've said this before, and I've gotten in trouble before, but I don't really care about that. I think evangelicals are the most hypocritical danger to this country. And the Republicans have felt like they were worthy of giving them attention because they wanted their support, and they just do whatever they want them to do. It's a funny thing about evangelicals. They claim to be holy. They claim to be religious, but they're willing to look away from every sin that Donald Trump commits, and he is a serial sinner, just to get what they want. And what they want is to overturn Roe v. Wade and make abortion illegal. The problem the evangelicals have with that, though, is, 75% of the country, at least, don't agree with them. This is a democracy. We've got to go with what the majority wants. Otherwise, there's going to be upheaval. And trust me, if Donald Trump was to be elected president and they have a national abortion ban, people are going to be pissed. And they are going to push back. JB says, I've listened to Boomer and Old Soul podcast. If you haven't, you got to. They're awesome. Old Soul is absolutely awesome. You got to listen to that. Jeanette says, all Americans must get involved. Also in the small urban communities, this is a need to make changes in all the political layers that are in the United States. Absolutely. We are in a position that we are in now for one reason. Because for decades, we've been apathetic. We sat back, did our shit, said, don't worry about it. The government's got it. Yeah, they're smart. They're getting paid. They'll do the right thing. We're finding out now that they don't do the right thing. And this is actually thanks to Donald Trump. A lot of this stuff that we're seeing now was always under the radar. Nobody really knew. There was always a way to deny it. But Donald Trump brought all this shit to the surface like a fever blister. And now we all know. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. We know. And we're pissed. And that's why we've got to do something about it. Bob says, old soul, you are still much loved. You're unbelievable in helping the helpless young clients without reward. I look up to you and your mother and daughter. Dan the man says, I still remember the pink hats. Dan says he knows how to sell it. He did drain the swamp. Well, Donald Trump didn't drain the swamp. He is the swamp monster. But he did expose the swamp so we can see that it actually exists. And about Old Soul, for those of you that don't know Old Soul, she's a very charitable woman, far more charitable than I would ever be. And through her charity, she has taken it upon herself to help those women who are in need of abortion care, but live in states where it's illegal. They need some place to go to get the treatment they need. And Old Soul opens up her house for these young women to stay with her while they're getting their medical care. Can you imagine that? Open the door for just anybody you don't know. It takes courage and it takes compassion, and that's what Old Soul does. And when that wasn't enough, she decides, I'm going to go talk to prisoners and talk to them about their voting rights. She is a trip, man. She does more than I would ever do. All I'm good for is sitting here and talking about shit. She actually goes out and does shit. It's truly amazing. And that's one of the most gratifying things I've found since I've been on TikTok and YouTube and Instagram and Facebook. It is how many people of a like mind there are. There's way more than people thought. People always talked about the boomers, and there are some fucked up boomers. I know them. I went to school with them. But there's a lot of us that aren't fucked up, that think right and are of a like mind. We're seeing that on TikTok. I have like 325,000 people following me there. The vast majority are between 45 and 65. Same goes here. What are we at? Like 4,200 here on YouTube. They're all between 45 and 65. That's not to say we don't have some young ones here, and I appreciate them immensely. I appreciate any time a young person listens to me, because I'll be perfectly honest. I've got a son 36 and a son that's 30, and they don't listen to shit when I'm talking. They just kind of look at me, shake their heads, and go, yeah, we heard all that shit before. John Judd, fake electors talking about election integrity. Yeah, absolutely. And that reminds me about something that's going on down in Georgia. The lieutenant governor there is being investigated as a fake elector. He apparently was a fake elector from Georgia back in 2020. Whether he'll get investigated, indicted, I don't know. But I'm going to Georgia on Monday, so I'll give him a call and see what's up. No, I won't do that. Dan says, I was born in 1960. Well, Dan, so was I. In fact, believe it or not, I've got a birthday coming up on Tuesday. I'll be 64 fucking years old. I'm old as shit. Somebody once asked me, it seems like you don't give a fuck. I said, well, I do give a fuck about things that are important, but generally I don't give a fuck. And they say, why? I said, look, I'm 64 years old. At best, I got 15, 20 years. How bad can I fuck things up in the next 15 to 20 years? I got 64 of them behind me. Time has come to let the reins off and let shit fly. And that's what I'm doing. Jackie says she's 60 on Sunday. Happy birthday. JV says happy birthday. Thank you. My granddaughter's birthday is April 26th. We're 60 years apart. I'll be 64. She'll be 4. And this birthday month is more important for her than me. I've had enough of these motherfuckers. Steve says, I didn't know you do lives. Well, I don't do them a lot. I was only doing them on TikTok for a time, and it just gets to be too messy, and I don't want to risk my account because of dumbass Trumplafucks. And then I did one on YouTube here, and it was kind of fun like this. We've got a lot of people, but not a crazy amount of people, and it's easy to do this. So I'll probably do more lives on YouTube. And if I can figure it out, I'll bring some guests on here. So 2 of us could be on here. I talked to Old Soul about doing that at one point. And Old Soul, I'd put you on now, but I have no fucking clue how to do that. So I'll just wait and see what I can figure out, and then we'll set something up to do that. The lives are fun. Jeanette says, a question, is it true that there is a town or village where the mayor is not elected, but that post is inherited? I have no fucking idea. It's possible in this fucking country. No, I don't know that. If anybody out there knows the answer to that, please let us know. Bob says, haha, born in 45. You are all like my kids, newly married 2 years ago. Well, congratulations, Bob. You were born in 45. Not to make you feel old, but my parents were born in 40. So they weren't boomers technically, even though my mom's father was in the war. They weren't boomers. I am a boomer, and I'm on the young side of the boomers. Boomers go 46 to 64. Now, I was born in 60, so I'm in a boomer. John Judge says, regarding the inherited mayor's job, I think it's in Alabama. Well, of course it's in fucking Alabama. Where else would it be? Yeah, I can see that happening. I don't have any verification of that, but I can see that happening as a possibility. James H. says, we got some things in common, Mike. I'll be 63 Sunday. I was born in Savannah. Savannah is an absolutely lovely town. Everywhere you go, the people are nice. You know, here I am, this fucking Yankee, walking around Savannah, and they're always nice to me. It's beautiful. It's historic. The food is great. The culture is great. You're not that far from Tybee Island. It is a great beach. And if you want something more upscale, you go to Hilton Head. My wife and I look forward to doing that. And now we're at the point where we're not really tourist anymore. We go down, we hang out, we see some people, we go out to dinner, check some things out. It's very low key. And when you're 64, low key is good. JV Cool says, that makes me a boomer too. Yeah, if you're in that range from 46 to 64, you're a boomer. Now, there's some people trying to say that between 55 and 65 is Generation Jones. And that may be, but that's just something relatively new. I don't know if somebody made that shit up. I'm a boomer according to what the boomer range is. I'm not going to get into that Generation Jones, although I do see myself as a little different than most boomers. You know, if you're in the 40s or 50s, early 50s, you grew up in a different generation, and things were vastly different in the 40s and 50s. Dan says, I'd like to see the South before I depart. We're talking about dying now. You should see the South. There's a lot of beautiful places in the South. And Savannah, of all the places I've been in the South, I like Savannah the best. That's kind of why we bought this little condo down there. We want a reason to go back there frequently, and we do. So what are you thinking about this trial coming up? Donald Trump has tried everything he could to delay this thing. On Monday, he filed a motion to delay the trial in the Manhattan District. On Tuesday, he filed a motion to delay the trial in the Manhattan District. That's 2 failures, 2 denials. Wednesday, he did it again, and he was denied again. Now, that wasn't the start of it this past week. Actually, at that point, he'd already filed 10 motions to deny the trial and was denied in all 10. But still on Wednesday, we thought we're still headed toward this trial. He's got to do something else. And sure enough, this morning, he filed another motion to deny or to delay, and he was denied again. So 11 times he tried to delay this trial, and 11 times he's failed. Not surprising with Donald Trump. He is the consummate failure. All right, Jackie says, so MAGA drove another school district administrator out of Wentzville, Missouri. Anyone else dealing with school BS? We voted out our nutty board members after they started up. Yeah, the school boards, that's a whole different show. My kids are out of school, but I dealt with some school boards, and those motherfuckers are crazy. Steve says, I wonder if Donald Trump flees. That is what you'd expect out of a narcissist when you're cornered. But it'd be incredibly stupid if he did that. Because you got to understand, he is surrounded by Secret Service agents. They are law enforcement. If Donald Trump figures a way to flee the country and the Secret Service is there, that Secret Service group is going to be in trouble. They're going to need to stop him. And even if he does go someplace, how hard is he going to be to find? This big orange piece of shit smelling like a dirty diaper, how hard is he going to be to find? Old Soul says, I'm waiting to see how the judge handles Trump's antics. It's not if he acts out, it's about how long it will take him to act out. Well, he's already acted out. That's the fucked up thing. He's already said some things on the borderline about the witnesses, Michael Cohen and Stormy Daniels, but nothing has been done as yet, and that's troubling to me. Donald Trump always talks about a two-tier legal system, and he's right, there is a two-tier legal system, but not the way he explains it. He's the one that gets treated with special treatment. David says he'll try to fire his lawyers to delay. Well, he may try that, but when they're this close to the trial, the judge has got to approve that in order to actually accomplish that. And let's be honest, the judge is not going to approve that. He knows what it is. It's a delay tactic. And the judge, Judge Marchand, he's tired of the bullshit. He's tired of the delays. You can see it when he denies these motions or when he makes the decisions he does. Steve says, I don't think Russia, in my honest opinion, hungry. Well, if he did go someplace, it was hungry. That's possible because he's a big fan of the leader there. But, you know, people keep saying, well, he'll go to Russia. He'll go to Saudi Arabia. You have to understand Donald Trump's a different animal now than he was when he was president. Donald Trump doesn't have any more money. He's going to get that taken away from him. And he has no more influence. He's just a guy with a dirty diaper sitting in Mar-a-Lago. He's no longer the president. The only bargaining chip he would have is if he had a chance to become president in 2024. And even the dumbest people can see that's not going to happen. So Donald Trump really has no value to Russia or Saudi Arabia or even Hungary for that matter. I don't think he's going to flee. I think he's going to curl up in a ball like Jim Baker did back in the day and cry and whine and play the victim because that's really all he can do. Jackie says, I heard he's going to take a plea deal. I don't think he's going to get a plea deal. See, that's the thing. A lot of people think that you can go to court and you just get a plea deal. Not everybody gets a plea deal. See, Donald Trump is the top of the pyramid. Anybody giving plea deals is used to get the top dog, and Donald Trump is the top dog. I don't think he's going to get a plea deal. There's no reason to do it. In fact, there's reason not to do it because we've got to make him accountable. We've got to expose all the evidence. Now, he's not going to get a plea deal. Phil says, new listener to pod, just found you on YouTube. Well, hey, thank you. Thank you very much. You're more than welcome to join us anytime and every time. David says, a convenient heart attack. That may be a last-ditch effort, but you got to understand about Donald Trump. He is a narcissist. He doesn't want to give any indication that he's weak. and that would make him weak and make him less of a candidate coming up in November. I don't think he'd fake that. Now, that said, he's not the healthiest emotionally, mentally, or physically. This kind of strain could do some damage to him, and he might have a physical breakdown. But I think it would be legit because I don't think he'd fake it. He wants to be the tough guy, the strong man, and that would show he was weak, at least in his mind. Dan says he's a little used to Vlad if he doesn't have power. Exactly. He has no value to anybody because he has no power. They're taking his money away, and he's a pariah in this country. I heard somebody say that Donald Trump is flaming out financially and politically, and he's getting close to crashing. And I think that's true. I've said this before, when he goes into this trial, while it may be considered the weakest trial of the four, it really doesn't matter. When he gets in there and he gets convicted, and he most certainly will, he's charged with 34 felonies. When he gets convicted of multiple felonies, that's when he's pretty much done. We know that voters will walk away from him if he has a conviction. His chances of winning in November are even less after that happens. And he is going to be crushed with all the pressure of courts, because once this court date is over, he'll have another and then another and then another. It's just going to beat him down unmercifully. Steve says, welcome, Phil. I'm a newbie too. Enjoy the Rational Boomer. Thank you very much, guys. Keith says he has U.S. intel to leverage a plea deal. He is holding us hostage. No, I don't think so. I mean, let's be honest. Whatever he's released already is already out the barn door. Now, they're not going to let him off the hook by him blackmailing the United States of America. Remember, we don't negotiate with terrorists, and Donald Trump is certainly a terrorist, and he leads a bunch of mouth-breathing, red meat-eating, dumb shit terrorists too, many of which are already in prison. Old Soul says Lawrence O'Donnell recently did a segment where he roasted the heck out of Trump. He was brutal. I like Lawrence O'Donnell. He's not a true newsman. He's been in politics, but he knows how to tell a story. Old Soul says, Steve, I watched it twice and laughed just as hard the second time. Yeah, Lawrence is very good at making fun of Donald. And that's something we should take to heart. As I've said, Donald Trump is a narcissist. You can threaten to put him in jail. You can threaten to take his money away. But the most devastating thing you can do to Donald Trump is embarrass him. Really is. You can embarrass him, and that is what's going to kill him. And that's one of the reasons he's so worried about this trial on Monday. He knows he's going to get convicted. I'm convinced he realizes he's going to lose. The real problem for him is the information that's going to get out, that's going to be embarrassing to him, like paying a porn star or a Playboy bunny or whatever, and some of the sexual aspects of this. This is going to make Donald Trump look bad and foolish and childish and criminal. And that's the one thing he doesn't want to happen. Steve says, Mike, what do you think of Speaker Mike in Florida today? Bunch of nothing. Well, it was a bunch of nothing in as far as they were trying to get support for something that's already illegal. That's so typical of the Republicans. Come up with some fake problem and then tell everybody they're going to fix it. But this was done for a couple of reasons. Mike Johnson was going to be kicked out the door because MAGA wanted him gone, especially if he does something with the Ukraine funding and with FISA. Now, if he did that, and he knew he had to do that, then Marjorie Taylor Greene was going to get a vote and try to kick him out a la Kevin McCarthy. Now, of course, the MAGA fucks, especially Marjorie Taylor Greene, worship Donald Trump. So he thought if he could go down there and make friends with Donald Trump, he would save his ass from getting kicked out. The fact of the matter is the Democrats probably could have saved him from getting kicked out. They need that Ukraine funding done. And all the Democrats had to say is, look, man, you pass that funding bill and we'll vote for you. And then they won't be able to touch you. Remember, Republicans only have a slim margin, a couple of people. Wouldn't take much for the Democrats to control that fucking thing. Dan says he might plead to a lesser charge. I doubt that. I think we'll have the trial. Well, what's the point of giving him a lesser charge? And I will push back on that for you a little bit. Why would he plead to a lesser charge? That's contrary to what a narcissist would do. He would have to admit he was wrong, that he was guilty. And Donald Trump just does not have it in him to do that. The Dems have said they will save Johnson. Yeah, if they get something out of it, if they get the Ukraine funding. The FISA bill did pass yesterday, or today actually. And so David says he heard it on Midas Touch. Midas Touch, I like Midas Touch. They are a very good news source. I don't like the way they deliver it because I like to get my shit right away, and they like to drag it out and make it more dramatic. That's their business plan, and they're more than welcome to do it their way, and they do a great job. It's just not for me to consume because I need the information faster. Dan says, yes, he doesn't admit fault. This is true. No, he doesn't. Somebody even asked him, this religious man who knows the Bible and sells the Bible, said, do you ever ask for forgiveness from Jesus? He said, no, I don't need to ask for forgiveness from Jesus. I haven't done anything. That's the motherfucker we're dealing with here. He is delusional, and he acts like he's religious, but he doesn't give a shit about religion. He doesn't give a shit about abortion. He just says whatever he has to say in order to get support. That's what he fucking does. Bob says Keith Olbermann Countdown is the original Lawrence Donald podcast on YouTube. Yeah, I like Keith Olbermann too. He's kind of funny, and he's very informative. David says he likes Ring of Fire on TikTok. I do too. He does a good job. Steve says they're totally going after getting the younger eyes engaged at Midas. Yeah, that's the thing. That's the difference between Midas and some other people, especially me. And that's the one thing I see about a lot of podcasts and a lot of people on YouTube and TikTok. Their goal is first and foremost to get as many viewers, as many followers as possible so they can make money. That's not my concern. When I first started doing TikTok, I was thinking about all the ways I could do it. I'd been in radio, I'd been in production. I could have played around and done all this fancy stuff and scripted everything and do that. But I said to myself, you're too fucking lazy to do that every day, so let's not do that. Let's just throw the chips on the table. I'm just going to sit in my living room like I'm doing here, talk my shit, and see what happens. And as luck would have it, people did start following on TikTok and here on YouTube and Instagram and Facebook and all of that stuff. My goal here isn't to get the most followers or viewers. If they come, they come. If they don't, okay, that's cool. My point is to get a message out. So we have a different strategy and a different goal. Midas Touch and me and Tony Michaels and all those guys, they all do a great job, but they're doing it for a different reason. And I don't shame them for it. I mean, I understand you're trying to start a business, you're trying to make some money. So go ahead and do that. I'll be the one guy that doesn't have to do that, and I'll feel more comfortable with it. I don't have to worry about what other people are going to tell me I should say or shouldn't say. Fuck that. It's me, only me making the decisions, and how you respond to it determine what I say and what we talk about. All right. Steve said, I'm so glad you did. Thank you. I feel better about it. I'm 64. I'm not trying to start a career. I already had a career. I'm just trying to do whatever good I can so that my kids and my grandkids have a better life in the end. That's really the only goal. If I can make a couple bucks doing it, and I do on TikTok, a little bit here on YouTube, but that's really not the goal. James says, Trump couldn't even tell you the first 3 lines of the Bible. No, he couldn't. Heard an interesting story. Donald Trump was ripping Stormy Daniels, which he is not allowed to do because of the gag order, but he was. And he said, Stormy Daniels will sell anything just to make a buck. And Stormy Daniels responded on X or Twitter, and she said, well, not exactly. I'd never sell a Bible. Donald Trump just walks into this fucking shit. All right. Steve McLeod says Hal Sparks. I know who Hal Sparks is, but I haven't seen him recently, so I can't respond to that one. It sounds like there's going to be a lot of witnesses in this trial, a lot of people that know a lot of shit about Donald Trump. And this has got to be making him nervous. Michael Cohen was right next to Donald Trump. He was his fixer. He went to jail for the very thing Donald Trump is on trial now. They always say, oh, Cohen is, you can't trust him because he went to jail. Yeah, motherfucker, you went to jail for you. Do your bidding for your benefit. So that's really not a good complaint. And then you've got Hope Hicks. That's an interesting one. Hope Hicks is a young woman who was working closely with Donald Trump, who knew everything. They felt like Hope Hicks was the one person that could keep Donald Trump calm. She ended up leaving the job, and she's been loyal to Donald Trump, but she's going to have to testify, and she's going to have to testify truthfully. And in fact, Alvin Bragg did something very interesting, kind of subtly, but I think a lot of people got it. He's probably worried about Trump loyalists coming on the stand during this trial and maybe lying. Well, they're going to think twice about that now because, well, you remember just a couple of days ago, they got Alan Weisselberg on perjury. They sent that motherfucker back to Rikers for 5 months. And Alvin Bragg did that to basically show future witnesses in Donald Trump's trial, we're not fucking around here. You lie to me, you're going to fucking jail. And you better believe these people noticed, and they are nervous about it. Dan says, old soul, it is good for those that don't know much about how things work, but those of us that know a little more, like a more concise bit information. Absolutely. You know, that's absolutely true. That's one thing that I hate about TikToks and some of the YouTubes where they have to recount everything to set it up. I understand why they do that. But I hate it when it takes 2 minutes to set everything up just to give you the point. Just give me the fucking point. I don't want to sit around and wait around. I want to see as much stuff, and I can't do that if I'm watching 5-minute fucking videos. Jackie says, the tabloid guy is the knife witness. I don't know if he did a deal for this testimony. David Pecker, the guy that owned the National Enquirer. Oh, look at that motherfucker. He's as slimy as you can get. You know he cut a deal. You know he's trying to save his ass, and he knows where the bodies are buried. He helped Donald Trump catch and kill these stories. And the thing about it is everybody now sees what's going to happen to Donald Trump. He's dying on the vine. He's going over the cliff. And most people with any intelligence aren't going to go with him. So the only option is to roll on him. And let's be honest, the district attorney wouldn't be calling these people as witnesses unless they had some good shit on Donald Trump. John Judge says, Tennessee Brando, good commentary. He's on TikTok. Yeah, Tennessee Brando does a good job. David says they play a lot of Trump speaking videos and I can't listen to him anymore. Yeah, I get that. Steve says, agree, John, and he's really stepping it up lately. Texas Paul. I like Texas Paul. I'm a little disappointed in Texas Paul. Now, don't get me wrong. I like the guy. He's smart. He says the right things. I used to really like his delivery, but it's changed since he's been connected with Midas Touch. Used to be he'd be walking down a road swearing, cussing, passionate about this shit. But now he's very calm. He sits in a rocking chair. I want to see the passion. And I sense the reason he pulled it back is because Midas Touch told him to pull it back. And see, that's where I would have a problem. If I was tied to one of these people and they said, Mike, you should do it this way, I would simply say, fuck yourself. I'll just do it myself because I want to be able to say what I want to say the way I want to say it. Now, other people have different strategies, different reasons for doing things, and I'm not going to fault them for it. I'm just saying I'm not going to do it. David says, Beau of the Fifth. Yes, Old Soul. That's a big one for Old Soul. Swearing Pond. Oh, great. You come on my YouTube live and we start promoting everybody else's podcast. Chill the fuck out, motherfuckers. I'm kidding. I'm happy to talk about all the other podcasts because I think, we as a collective need as much good information as we can, whether it comes from me or some of these other really good people on TikTok and on YouTube. There is a lot of them. Those two young kids that do it, they're fantastic. Chasing Oz, she's fantastic. Stella Maggs, love her. There are so many people that are so good at this, and we can get a lot of good information from them. Frankly, I get a lot of good information from them, and I suspect some of them get information from me. It doesn't fucking matter. Long as we get the information out to a lot more people and people are educated. Like I said, one of the reasons we are in the position we're in is because of apathy. For decades and decades, we've been apathetic. We have not been involved. And that's one of the next things that Donald Trump did that was positive for this country. He scared people so much that he forced people to get involved. A lot of people that would be sitting on the couch having their popcorn, drinking a beer, but now they're up and they're in these lives or doing these lives, and they're talking some shit because they've awakened the sleeping giant, which is the people of this country of a like mind. We're tired of this shit. Anyhow, how you all doing? Friday fucking night and you're watching Rational Boomer live. Do none of us have social lives? I mean, at 64, social life to me is going out to dinner with my wife, coming home and doing a podcast, then going to bed. That's my social life. But some of you people, like Old Soul, you're a young woman. What the fuck are you doing sitting in the house on a Friday night? Gator Girl says Jesse Dollamore and Brittany Page. Yeah. Steve says, I'm lucky to be awake. John says, old man is having a beer. Yeah, you got to kind of relax. And I'll be honest with you. One of the things I like about YouTube and TikTok is I really tire of watching the mainstream media because they tend to be repetitive about things. They'll have a stretch of things they talk about, and then they start back at the beginning. I'm looking for new information. And a lot of times what you hear in the mainstream media is repetitive. And once I've heard it once, I don't need to hear it again. I got it in my head. I know what I'm going to talk about. I know how I'm going to talk about it. I don't need it to be hammered in my head. It's funny. When we were young, I was young, we didn't have 24-hour news. We had news at 6 and 10 and maybe a national news, and that was it. If something big happened, we'd either get a special report or we'd wait till 6 or 10 o'clock to hear it. Now it's news overload. No matter what time of the day you turn on the TV or go on the internet, and there's more news stories. And in some respects, that's good, but for most people, it's a little too much. They get tired. They get burnt out about this. I don't really, because I don't spend as much time as you might think on it. I look at the news stories. I come up with approach. I do the TikToks. I can do 5, 6 TikToks in an hour or two. And then I'm just done with it for a while until something else comes along. Keith says Dr. Heather Cox Richardson puts out a very good letter every day. She is probably writing our history textbooks for the future. You know what's funny about that? I get her email. I don't think I've ever read it. I should, but as I've told you folks, I'm a lazy fuck. I want to hear the stuff, put it together in my head, research what I need to know, and then move on. Like you said, there's a lot of other podcasts that do what I do. I don't really listen to them because I don't want to spend an hour trying to figure out what I need to know. I've got to do my own podcast. I've got to do my TikToks, and I need to know what's going on now so I can put that together so I can pass it along to you. Bob says, waiting for and expecting Epstein connection to Trump. Remember the Trump denying he hardly knew Epstein. It will be very slimy. Well, he's already been connected to Jeffrey Epstein. There's all the pictures. We know he went to Epstein's island. But there's something else I've talked about before, and I don't know if you know about it. Prior to the election, there was a lawsuit. Donald Trump and his co-defendant was Jeffrey Epstein. And it was a lawsuit from a woman who was of age at the time, but she was suing them for the rape of a 13-year-old girl. I've seen the documents. It's true. It's real. And just before the election, all of a sudden it disappeared. It went off the table. What do you think happened there? Do you think Donald Trump threatened her? Yeah, I'm guessing he did. And then after the presidency, it came back and then it went away again. I want to hear more about that case because that's specific. The woman who was raped is still alive. She's in her 40s now, I believe. But somebody needs to give her a microphone and put her in front of everybody and let her tell her story. And I think that will probably come after the election, after Donald Trump starts to fade. But I'm sure she has a certain amount of fear. I mean, anybody he talks to seems to get death threats and get stalked and puts themselves in danger. But that's the story I want to hear because that is the most damaging story. Co-defendants with Jeffrey Epstein and a lawsuit regarding the rape of a 13-year-old child. And it sounds like it was a brutal rape if you look at the documentation. All you have to do is Google it. You can probably find the document, and I would suggest you check it out. Steve says, I wonder if the whole Diddy thing is connected. Yeah, that's weird. That's really weird. That Diddy thing, that's troubling. You know, I spent some time in the music business back in the 80s, not high enough up to know anything about this stuff. But I will tell you that business is a slimy business, even from the level I was at. I wouldn't be surprised if this kind of shit goes on, and clearly it sounds like it did. It sounds all too familiar to what Jeffrey Epstein did. Jeffrey Epstein mentor P. Diddy? Who the fuck knows? I wouldn't be surprised. You know, in as far as Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein not knowing each other, Jeffrey Epstein once said that Donald Trump was his mentor. And that makes sense because Jeffrey Epstein made most of his money with blackmail. And Donald Trump is certainly not above that. Donald Trump does those sorts of things. It's either bullying or blackmail or something like that. So maybe he did learn his trade by way of Donald Trump. All right. Gator Girl says, we are going to be discovering crap about Trump for decades to come. You're absolutely right. People think this is going to be over when the trials are over or when the election comes and goes. This is something that's going to be talked about. This is something where they're going to discover crimes long after I'm gone. It's going to be maybe one of the biggest corruption stories in the history of this country. I think it already is. But it's going to take a while to sort these things out because even if Donald Trump is convicted, he is going to appeal. And it's all going to take a long time. And then we've got the possibility of sitting members of Congress, Ginny Thomas, the Supreme Court. This is going to go on a long time. They're under the gun now with Donald Trump trying to get things done before the election. You know, but it's really funny. People are so worried that we get all these trials done before the election. And honestly, I don't really care. Because this Manhattan District Court case is coming off on Monday. It's going to go 2 months. It'll be done by the end of May, early June. Donald Trump will be convicted of multiple crimes well before the election. And that will be enough to do him in. As much as he wanted to push everything out past the election, that's not going to work well for him. First of all, he's not going to win the election. I'd bet my house on it that he's not going to win the election. There's nothing that suggests he can. So what's going to happen is whatever trials are left over after the election, he's going to be ultra fucked in that situation because he won't have the protection of being the president or running for president. He'll just be a dumb fuck with dirty pants down in Mar-a-Lago, if he even still owns Mar-a-Lago at that point, and they are going to bury him. That's why I've said before, this Manhattan District case is the one that puts him on the grave. All these other cases are just the dirt on top of the grave. Old Soul says, we know so much dirt about Trump, I can only imagine how much we don't know. Yeah, absolutely right. We know a ton of dirt regarding Donald Trump, but it ain't even the half of it. It's not even the half of it. And this is kind of like an avalanche. Once it breaks, it's going to come down a lot. And I think this Manhattan District case might be the thing that breaks it loose for Donald Trump. You remember when they were talking about indictments and everybody seemed kind of cautious about filing these indictments. You remember that, right? Well, finally, the Manhattan District was the first group to issue an indictment. And then what happened? Then you got Georgia, then you got DC, then you got Florida. Everybody was jumping in on it, piling on once one person did it. And it's going to happen the same way with this trial. Once this trial goes off and Donald Trump is convicted, then things are going to start sliding and Donald Trump is going to get buried. Senator Sheldon Whitehouse has been investigating the Supreme Court. Well, I think that's good. I think Sheldon Whitehouse is a very bright man and is very much in the know with regards to Supreme Court. And once we can get past November and the Republicans have no more power, Sheldon Whitehouse is going to be a demon when it comes to the Supreme Court. Doug says, love you, old soul. Love you too, Rational Boomer. Keep hammering orange dirty diaper Trump. Will do. Thank you very much. He has tighter ties than we will ever know. I think we know it. I mean, didn't his son, before he was president, said, oh, we get all kinds of money from Russia? Donald Trump got bailed out the last time he was on the edge with the casinos, and he filed for bankruptcy. Somebody had to bring him back, and Dad was already dead, and he'd wasted all of Dad's money. So somebody had to bail him out, and it was more than likely Russians. We can see it. The Russians own a lot of his condos in Trump Tower. It got to the point where Donald Trump didn't build anything anymore. Other people built, and they paid him to stick his name on the front of it. He was basically licensing his name. He wasn't building shit. And most of those buildings being put up were Russian, or at least foreign in some way. So his ties to Russia are fucking deep, and they will get exposed ultimately. Jackie says, I think White House is president material. I do too, except for one thing. I think he would be a great president, but I think we should be done with old white men as president. We've got millennials and Gen Zs going to be the majority of the voters in 2028. It's time we old white people are put on the side. We have no business determining the futures of these young people. Just what you need, a bunch of old white men deciding whether abortion should be legal or not. People that can't even have children are making that decision. I think it's time for the millennials and the Gen Zs to pick up the slack and take control. And then we can sit back and hopefully they will do it better than we did, because we fucked up big time. David said, I always thought he was working for Russia right along. Stopping aid is killing them right now. Yeah. It kind of goes to what I was saying about before with Donald Trump in Washington. To suggest he's an asset of Russia, I think might be kind of a misnomer. He's not smart enough to be an asset, but he is just the right intelligence of being a useful idiot. Because Vladimir Putin knows as well as the people in Congress, all you have to do is pat him on the back, tell him you like him, and he'll do whatever you want. Let's cancel NATO. Oh, sure, buddy, let's do that. Donald Trump is that dumb. He's too dumb to be real dangerous, but he's so influenced by other evil fucks. That's where the problem lies. David says, how is he still running things? I'm not, you're talking about Vlad? Vlad is doing it with fear tactics and power. John Judd says, I'm silent Gen X. I still have a dog in the fight. Yes, you do. I still have a dog in the fight. I have kids and grandkids, and I'm going to be here for a little while longer. But I think we should be done with old white men deciding what the future is, because the future is not ours. The future is the millennials and the Gen Zs. And white men, generally speaking, have proven to fuck things up. David says Trump runs the House. Kind of. He does control MAGA, which is the Republicans in the House. But we can see what's happening here. The margin is getting slimmer and slimmer every day. And when it is, there is not as much power in the Republican House. So from this point on, after they do this Ukraine thing, and now that they've gotten done with this FISA thing, you can probably bet that nothing will get done between now and November. The Republicans just don't have the power to do it. I wanted to bring something else up too, because I heard this. I did a TikTok about it. And I heard one of the TikTokers reporting on something that Tom Hartman wrote. Apparently, he's a well-respected guy. I've never read his stuff, but I've heard about him. I think even Old Souls talked about it. And Tom Hartman said something that he was fearful of. And I'll tell you what it is. What he was suggesting in this post was that what could happen is that the Democrats win the House, but then Mike Johnson refuses to swear them into office, give them the oath of office, keeping the Republicans in power, and then somehow they'll try to pull the presidential election into the House of Representatives, and then Donald Trump will win. I've heard that story before, and that is all absolute bullshit. It's bullshit. There was a Supreme Court case that said the House of Representatives, specifically the Speaker of the House, cannot refuse to swear in a duly elected candidate. He can't. The only thing they can do is swear them in and then try to expel them from the House of Representatives. But here's another thing to consider. If the Democrats win the House on January 3rd, theoretically, Mike Johnson won't even be the Speaker of the House. Assuming the Democrats take power, it would be Hakeem Jeffries. See, my point is that people go out looking for things to worry about. They like to throw shit out there to get people all worried, so they keep coming back, consuming their shit. That's not going to happen. Mike Johnson is a weak-ass bitch. He's proved it since he's been in office. There is no way he would even attempt to do that, let alone have the authority to do that. Neither is true. He can't do it. So don't listen to that shit. Just don't listen to that shit. It's ridiculous. The Supreme Court already decided this, and that's not a thing. It's one of the things that troubles me, and one of the reasons I do the Rational Boomer podcast and the Rational Boomer on TikTok, because there's so much information out there that's wrong, or they don't tell you all the information. They just tell you the bad news, but they don't tell you the facts. And in order for us to figure things out, analyze things, we got to know all the facts. So for me, when I hear a story, I dig out all the facts, and then I decide what that means. And generally, it's not as fatalistic as what some of these media outlets will make you believe. John says, an old man once told me, freedom comes with responsibility. Absolutely. Absolutely. Steve says, Mike, do you see how Trump made Mike fall in behind him after the presser? Trump is so fragile. Yeah, Trump is very fragile. I mean, this guy emotionally is broken. That's what you have to understand about narcissists. They come off strong. They come off brash, but they are probably the weakest people you will ever know. This is all trying to cover up deep, deep insecurity. This guy knows he's a failure, and he's afraid for people to find out about it. This is why he's shaking now, because he sees that people may ultimately find out he is a fraud, a fake, and a failure. And this is driving him nuts. So anyway, I didn't watch the press conference. What the hell was I? I was doing something with my wife, and my wife is very specific. If I'm hanging out with my wife, I focus on what we're doing, not on my phone. I got to be very careful. I didn't stay married 40 years for being a dumbass. I know when I got to get in line. David says, I remember him pushing a PM out of his way. Yeah, I mean, he's just a fucking rube. He doesn't have any decorum. He's rude as hell, and he's a rube. This is why I don't understand how the Republicans continue to fall behind him and support him. Every day he does something stupid. Every day he does something to fuck over the Republican Party. I mean, he has control over the RNC now, pretty much drained that of all money. Now I understand they're having trouble with trying to figure out how to come up with money for the convention coming up this year. Can you imagine that? Not having enough money to come up with a Republican convention? That would be a little fucking embarrassing. They also don't have money for the down ballot folks. RNC helps the down ballot folks. And I think this is the best part of it. I hope Donald Trump does drain every penny out of the RNC, because we know Donald Trump is going to lose. But I'd love to see those senators, those representatives, the legislators in the various states, and the governors not get the support they need and lose too. That would just add to this blue wave we've been talking about, and it'll be very interesting. Steve says, you talk about being familiar with narcissistic behavior with your father. Have you covered this in past videos? Yeah, I've talked about it a number of times. Basically, when I was growing up in the 60s, I had a mom who was wonderful. Thank God for her. That's the only reason I became, my brother and sisters and I were anywhere near normal. But my father was basically a mini Donald Trump. He was a young man. He was only 20 years older than I was, and he was in business when I was very little. And like most narcissists, he was pretty successful. Now, he wasn't as rich as a billionaire, but for where we lived, he was probably made the most money of anybody. I mean, in the 80s, he made $250,000 a year, which is a king's ransom then. And he was very proud of that. He spent most of his time working. He didn't do much parenting, but when he was around, he had a tendency to lose his temper and not so much be physical with the kids, but he said some of the most horrible things you could possibly ever say to a child. I used to say, I'll never do that to my kids. And then when I had kids, I realized I'd be a fucking nutcase if I did it. I don't even have any interest in doing that. So we didn't have the best relationship. He wasn't compassionate. He really didn't care about his kids. Later on, we found out he was abusive to my mom, which was a deal breaker. He did a lot of fucked up shit. And for the past 25, 30 years of his life, I didn't really deal with him. He had a lot of drama that he went through, and he'd always reach out for help from us. And my brother's a little more compassionate than I, and he'd want to do it, and I'd tell him not to do it, because then he'll just fuck you over. He'll abuse you and use you, and you'll end up holding the bag, which would have been the case. So I hadn't seen him for a long time. But one thing I learned about narcissists by living with him, this is how it always goes. When you're a narcissist, you start out strong. People are believing the bullshit and the bluster. You become very successful because people continue to believe you. And then all of a sudden, there starts to be some cracks. The one thing you'll notice about a narcissist is they don't have any close friends, and their family starts to back away from them. Because from a distance, they look very attractive, but up close, as I say, you can see the cracks, and you can see the darkness in their soul, and they do some truly fucked up stuff. So the narcissist loses support from these people. When he does have good friends or close friends, they quickly get away from it because this is just fucking crazy. So when that starts to happen and the business isn't quite as successful, there starts to be a spiral. There's a spiral. And he's kind of trying to hold things together, but it's not going very well. That's the one thing you have to understand about narcissists. They are control freaks, and that's how they've gotten by all their life with all their lies. They've been able to handle it. He lies over there. Well, he's got to make it look right, so he's balancing things all the time. But they all get in the same situation. It gets overwhelming. They're trying to juggle too many balls, and eventually it becomes too much. It happened with my father. It's currently happening with Donald Trump. Now, as I've said, narcissists always end up the same way: embarrassed, shamed, and failed. My father, who had made a lot of money all of his life and had been successful and did nothing but talk about it, when he died, he was in a one-bedroom apartment with very little furniture, with no contact with his family for more than 20 years. He barely knew my kids, who are in their 30s now, and he certainly didn't know his great-grandkids. And he died in a recliner chair in his underwear, all alone. And that's how it ends up for Narcissist. And that's how it will end up for Donald Trump. All right. Hopefully that covers what you're asking about. John said, Trump gets around pretty for a bone spurs after all these years. I wonder who went in his place. Yeah, who the fuck knows? Donald Trump had a dad and money to get him out of everything. See, that's where Donald Trump is confused right now. All of his life, for 70 years, somebody was always there to bail him out. Always. I mean, to the point where even the judicial system in New York, he broke laws decade after decade, but they let him off. They let him slide. But now he's in a situation that he's unaccustomed to. And the situation is this. Nobody's bailing him out. He's becoming put in a position where he's going to have to be accountable for his shit. And he just doesn't get it. He doesn't fucking understand it for the life of him. So this is going to be an interesting time for Donald Trump. He is going to freak the fuck out, and I'm just anxious to see what he does about it, how he behaves. Old Soul said that's why Melania looked like she's in a hostage video anytime she's near Trump. You know, a lot of people feel sorry for Melania, okay? Oh, poor Melania. She's married to Donald Trump. Here's what you have to remember. She married Donald Trump knowing exactly what she's gotten into. She continued to be married to Donald Trump through all his bullshit, knowing who he is. I would suspect that Melania isn't a lot better than Donald Trump, just different. Steve says, do you think big donor money will support down ballot Republicans direct? Maybe a little bit. But you got to understand what's going on. These big donors are seeing what we're seeing. The Republicans have done everything they can to fuck themselves. They aren't going to throw good money after bad money if they know they're going to lose. And, you know, the interesting thing is there's a lot of Trump trolls that are running in these elections. And the Democrats love that. The crazier the fucker is, the better chance their candidate has to win. So as long as Donald Trump is endorsing people and these Trump-la-fucks think they can gain some ground by being like Donald Trump, God bless them, because they're going to fucking lose. Steve says she got what she signed up for. Yeah. She got citizenship in this country and she got money and position. Now, if she's upset about it, well, you got what you asked for. Be careful what you ask for. You just might get it. But even if it was the 80s when he met Melania, she knew who Donald Trump was. He was a dumb fuck back then. He was a criminal back then. If she didn't see it, she's oblivious. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Donald Trump reacts henceforth. Because at this point, things are going to go south quickly for Donald Trump in terms of everything with him, his emotional state, his mental state, his financial state. Because, you know, like we were talking about before, on Monday, he's going into his criminal trial. But the following Monday, while he's still in that trial, guess what's going to happen? There's a hearing to try to determine if this guy, this hanky guy that put up the bond for him, is legit. And when you look at everything and you look at the rules for posting a bond, he isn't even close. They're going to have this hearing and they're going to find out that this bond isn't legit. And when they verify that it's not legit, Letitia James is going to go out there, start seizing properties and start liquidating properties. So imagine that. He's sitting in court every day, 10 hours a day. He can't leave. He can't talk while Letitia James is out selling his shit. How do you think he's going to deal with that? How do you think that's going to fucking go? It's not going to go well. It's not going to go well. And that's going on while his True Social stock is taking a shit. At its highest level, it was $70 a share. It dipped into the teens today. Into the teens. I think it's in the 20s now, but it dipped into the teens. Donald Trump and that company has literally lost billions of dollars in 2 weeks. What do you think it's going to do in the next 2 weeks? It's going to fucking disappear. It's going to become a penny stock. And maybe the auditors then do, in fact, shut down the company. Donald Trump's fail-safe is going to die, just like everything Donald Trump does. He fails at everything. It's pretty hilarious, actually. When I was doing the TikToks, people would come to me and they'd say, "Oh yeah, well, Donald Trump just made $5 billion. Eat that shit." I go, "Well, he can't touch it for 6 months and the stock doesn't look promising." "Oh no, he's going to get $5 billion. I said, "No, he's not. And the fact is, it's not. It's definitely not. He's not going to walk away with a lot of money. Hell, he might be in jail 6 months from now when he's in a position to sell it." And here's the other thing. He can't just cash out of this thing. Even if it's worth some money, he can't cash out of it. He can only take a certain amount over a certain period of time. Certainly not enough to save his soul. There may not be enough left for him to save his soul. David says it's currently at 32.41 a share, which is less than half of what it was when it was at its peak 2 weeks ago. Yeah, that's going good, isn't it? I don't know much about the stock market, but anybody with any brains would have to figure out that that wasn't a good bet. All you had to do was find out that this company lost $58 million last year, and some auditors are suggesting they should shut it down. This is why it's a cult. Anybody with any intelligence wouldn't invest in this thing, but dumb fucks still did. They thought they were doing something. But you know what, those dumb fucks? I hope they put a lot of money into it because they've lost half of their money in 2 weeks. Have fun with that. Jeanette says, "Isn't it also in this month that immunity comes?" Yeah, actually, there's going to be arguments for the immunity case with the Supreme Court, and that's coming on the 25th. They'll have the arguments. The Supreme Court will hear it, and then I don't know when they'll come back with a decision. Some people said it may not be till June. But if you think the Supreme Court is going to give him immunity, that's absolutely fucking crazy. That's not going to happen. If they give Donald Trump immunity, that means Joe Biden gets immunity. He could cancel the election, put Donald Trump in jail, and fire the Supreme Court justices, and nobody could do shit to him if there's immunity. So you really think the Supreme Court's going to give him immunity? No. And if they don't give him the immunity, which they won't, then Donald Trump's defense in all of his cases pretty much go out the window. He is profoundly fucked at that point. Steve McLeod says, "I love Tim Pool bragging he bought shares and then it crashed. They thought they were so smart." Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love, anybody who's connected with Donald Trump, financially speaking, always loses money. Sometimes it's because Donald Trump steals it from them, or sometimes it's just because Donald Trump is a dumb fuck and anything he does fails. But people keep doing it. What the fuck are you thinking? Why would you do that? Makes no sense. But Donald Trump's in for a bad couple of weeks. Criminal trial. His bond is going to go to shit. They're going to start selling off his stuff. Stock market or stock in Truth Social is taking a shit, and it's going to keep dropping. The immunity thing is going to be discussed, and he's going to fail there too. I wonder what he's going to do then. Is he going to start screaming at the Supreme Court? You know, it's funny. Donald Trump likes to place blame. And as he's been watching the stock market drop, or his stock in Truth Social drop like a rock, he's now complaining about NASDAQ and the stock market as if they are conspiring against him. He says, "My stock should be billions of dollars just because of the Trump name, my brand. It's so valuable." He said it's like Michelangelo or Da Vinci. If their works were put out in the market, they would have an intrinsic value because it's Da Vinci and Michelangelo. Isn't it like Donald Trump to compare himself to Jesus, Michelangelo, and Da Vinci? Well, I'm sorry, Donnie, your brand sucks. And so does your company. It sucks. You can't coerce or push the stock market to do what you want it to do because it has nothing to do with intangibles. It's very tangible. People put money in and people pull money out. So the only thing you can surmise with what's going on with your stock is that people think you suck and your stock sucks. That's as simple as that. And you can complain and whine all you want. It ain't going to do any good. Your stock is going to die on the vine and it's going to be worth nothing in the not too distant future. John says $170 million bond is in trouble too. Yeah, we were talking about that. When this guy posted the bond, there was nothing that he did that fell in line with what the rules are. He didn't have enough money in his company. He didn't provide a financial statement. Some people thought it was just a mistake, but I think he didn't provide the financial statement because he knew he wouldn't qualify, and he was trying to slip one by. Isn't that oh so Donald Trump? Trying to do just enough to slip one by and hopefully that somebody will give him a break. Well, in this case, he didn't get a break. So when they have this hearing on the 22nd, a week from Monday, they will determine that this guy is not a legitimate bondsman. This bond is not legitimate. Donald Trump's already had his 10 days extended. So now it's a matter of Letitia James just getting into the mix and start taking his shit. Because if Donald Trump had to resort to this clown to get this bond, he doesn't have a lot of options at this point. There aren't a lot of options. He can't get the money. This guy was just going to fake like he had the money so Donald Trump could cover his ass and get some more time. Well, the fact of the matter, Donald Trump, is time has run out and you couldn't get the $170 million. John Judge says, while picking a jury. Yeah, that's right. On Monday, when this trial starts, that's the first thing that happens. They've got to pick a jury through something called voir dire. This is where they question the people to see if they're acceptable to be on the jury. They called in literally hundreds of people to be interviewed, so it could take a while. Generally, this voir dire process, I'm told, takes a day, maybe a couple hours. This one's going to take longer. You can bet that Donald Trump's lawyers are going to make it a mess, a shit show, and they're going to have to determine whether these are fair and honest people. Alvin Bragg and his team are going to have to try to figure out if there's some Trump-lefuck trying to sneak through and lie and then work for Donald Trump. Well, then you'd have to presume that these Trump-lefucks had some kind of intellect, and you and I both know that they fucking don't. So, yeah, that's not going to happen. You're not going to get a hung jury with Donald Trump. It sounds like the evidence is pretty damning. This is pretty much just a documents case. And with the documents case, it's pretty cut and dry. Did you do this? Yeah, the document says we did it. Donald Trump's going to get convicted. He may get convicted of all 34 felony charges. Can you imagine that? People have said, will he go to jail? If he got convicted of one, maybe not. But when you're talking about 10, 15, 20, 30 convictions, they don't really have any choice but to put him in jail. Old Soul says, John, can you imagine finessing the court of $175 million? We'd be under the jail. Absolutely. And this is the most troubling thing about Donald Trump. He's been doing this for decades. He talks about a two-tier legal system. Well, there is a two-tier legal system. He's on one tier and the rest of us are getting our ass kicked. This needs to stop. They need to brush the shine off of Donald Trump. He's no longer the golden child. He is nothing but a corrupt criminal. And he's a habitual criminal. I dare say he is the most prolific criminal in this country today. Think about that. 91 felony charges against him in 4 jurisdictions. Name one other person in this country that has that many charges against him. I can't think of any. There may be 1 or 2 that had more in past history. But this guy is the most prolific criminal in history, and still Republicans support him. Truly fucking amazing. Truly fucking done. The interesting part will be will they remand him immediately. That is going to be the interesting thing. We've got the gag order. He's got to behave a certain way while he's in court. We're almost certain that he won't. So what will the judge do? We haven't seen a judge do anything with regards to gag orders or his behavior. I'm hoping that this is a different situation, though, mainly because we've got a criminal trial. We've got a judge that's tired of it all. He's not having it, as you can find out by how there's been no delays. I can't imagine that he's going to allow Donald Trump to try to pollute the jury. And when Donald Trump will say the things he says in courts, it could have an impact. It could cause problems with the jury. And a judge like Marchand is not going to tolerate it. At the worst case, he would have to take Donald Trump out of the courtroom, put him in a separate room, and put him on video so he can't talk. Can you imagine that? A former president, you have to do that to because he's ill-behaved. He's like an incorrigible child. John says contempt is tricky. Yeah, apparently it is, because we keep hearing about contempt and nobody's done anything about it. What the fuck is going on? I mean, Jesus, how much more stuff does he have to do? He's got a severe gag order now, and he talks shit about two witnesses, which should be a violation of the gag order. Yet here we sit, and nothing's been done. Maybe Marchand is waiting to get him in court, and then he's going to take him to task. I hope so. At some point, Donald Trump has to be accountable. At some point, Donald Trump has to pay a price. And I expect it's coming starting Monday, but we still have to wait and see. John says, so they would have already kicked the dirt on us. Yeah, absolutely. That's the problem. And you know, it's not just Donald Trump, and this is what Donald Trump has exposed. This country's judicial system is all about hierarchy, or I don't know how to explain it, but if you're rich, you're famous, you're powerful, preferably if you're white, you get treated with kid gloves. Anybody else that doesn't fall in line with that gets fucking hammered. That's white people, but particularly people of color. You know, we saw that OJ Simpson passed away. And I told a story about how I met OJ Simpson one time. I was a young man. I was a stringer, which meant I went out to do interviews and sold those interviews to radio stations. I met OJ Simpson one time. He had retired from football, but he was doing press conferences promoting orange juice, and he was going to be there and didn't give a fuck about the orange juice, but I wanted to meet OJ Simpson. I went there, listened to the press conference, and then afterwards I said, hey, can I talk to you for a little bit? And I sat and talked to him for about 15 minutes, interviewed him. And I got to say, he's an absolute wonderful guy when I met him. But then 15, 16 years later, this whole thing with the white Bronco and Nicole Brown Simpson happens, and I'm going, what the fuck? I met this guy. He's a cool guy. And then I realized what the issue was. OJ Simpson had been coddled and pampered all of his life. And either he started from the beginning or he developed a certain amount of narcissism. And you were starting to see it bleed out as he got older. We kept hearing about the abuse to Nicole Brown Simpson before he died, the videotapes, the audio tapes, and all that stuff. And it seemed weird that OJ Simpson, this great guy, was doing this. But it made sense if he was truly a narcissist. Because as I said before, narcissists from a distance, they look really good. They look very attractive. It's not till you get close till you realize, oh, these are some fucked up people. These are some absolutely fucked up people. So when you look at that and you understand he may have been a narcissist, embarrassment is the most devastating thing to them. You know, maybe he's out, he has a couple of drinks, he's upset about his wife or former wife, and maybe she's dating, and he just fucking loses it. He figures a way that he thinks he can get away with it, and he does. I had a lot of people push back on me and say that OJ Simpson, he was not found guilty, so he's innocent. No, he's not. There were a lot of things fucked up about that case. First of all, the LA Police Department fucked up every bit of evidence, and had they not done that, he would have been convicted. Had there been DNA at the time, he definitely would have been convicted. There was one woman who claimed that she saw the white Bronco and OJ Simpson screeching by where she was headed toward that house on the night of the murder. But she was not allowed to testify. Do you know why? Because she went to a magazine and sold her story. The moment she sold her story, it was tainted and they couldn't use it. So they couldn't use that evidence against OJ Simpson. But there's another factor in why OJ Simpson was found not guilty. If you were alive when that was going on, you saw the divide in races when that happened. When he was found not guilty, a lot of white people said, "Oh, that's fucked up. I can't believe it. He got away with murder." But a lot of people of color, not all people of color, but a lot of people of color cheered this. They were excited. They didn't know whether he was guilty or not, but they were glad that he got off. And people saw that as kind of a racial divide, and it is a racial divide, but you had to understand what the people of color had gone through up to that point and why they were excited about one of their own, another person of color, getting off. Before this whole OJ Simpson thing, you might remember the Rodney King thing, right? With the Rodney King thing, a bunch of white cops beat the shit out of Rodney King. It was all on videotape. They went to court and they all got let off. I mean, it was on videotape. The crime was being committed, but they let him off. And frankly, at that period of time, the Los Angeles Police Department was known to be corrupt. There was a lot of abuse of people of color and white people getting away with it, but people of color getting busted and getting hammered. So as much as the Los Angeles Police Department fucked up the evidence, there's a lot of people that were excited about O.J. Simpson winning because finally, somebody of color got a break. There's no breaks given to people of color in Los Angeles at that time, and it seemed like the white people always got the break. So I think a lot of folks, rightfully so, said, well, finally, we get one. But it took O.J. Simpson, who was famous and powerful and had money. So that's what I think happened with the O.J. Simpson thing. And frankly, the fact that he's dead now, I don't have any empathy for him. He should have been gone a long time ago. He is kind of, I've heard stories about people who know him who basically said, he's not a good guy. He's a narcissistic, self-centered piece of shit. And I can believe that. You know, when you got a guy that has a life like he had, he was the golden child. No matter where he went, he was handed a silver plate and silver utensils. And then when things start to go wrong, you get a little older, your wife goes out and finds somebody else. The jobs start to dry up a little bit. That's when a narcissist gets fucked up, fucked in the head. That's when they do. And when they do, it gets pretty ugly. And that's what I'm concerned about with Donald Trump. He is in a corner now. There is no way out. He is unaccustomed to having no way out. There's always a way for him to bully, to blackmail, to push, to have somebody bail him out. But all of that is gone. He has been spiraling for a long time, and that crash is imminent. It's imminent, and he's in fucking trouble. There's no question about it. So anyway, it's getting a little late here. I got to get some rest. I don't know if I'm going to use this as the podcast or do another podcast. But anyway, I want to thank you for coming to the live. It's always a pleasure to hear from the people that listen or view. And I'm going to do the lives more often so we can get together and talk some more. We got a lot of work to do between now and November. And even after November, we got a lot of work to do. We ain't near done. But soon we'll see the improvements we need to drive us on to the next issue that we have to deal with. All right. I want to thank you for coming by and participating and watching and listening. I hope you all have a great day, and we'll talk to you again real soon.